Namaskar, Nilesh. This is continuation of Shraddha and Pradnya series. This would be part 44, and we are going to continue our discussion on Mercury and Venus evidence from the Mahabharata text in the context of the Mahabharata war, specifically again 18 days of the Mahabharata war for today. But in general, around the time of Mahabharata war, which means 5561 BCE plus minus 1 year, when appropriate, when relevant. All right, we are still looking at Mercury and Venus, the inner planets. Just to repeat, they are never far from the sun, and thus the window of opportunity to observe Mercury is very narrow. You can observe it just after sunset if the position of Mercury is to the east of the sun and also sufficiently separated from the position of the sun. You can also observe it just before sunrise for, under similar circumstances, sufficient separation from the sun. In case of Venus, directionally, the same rules apply, except the separation that actually occurs is much more, 45 up to 45 to 47 degrees. So that's like 3 plus nakshatra separation. And so it's not that difficult to observe Venus or Shukra. All right, in today's session, we are going to look at two specific observations of Mercury, and they are not connected with Venus. Okay, so let's begin there. A quick summary for the Venus evidence. We are not going to look at Venus evidence in this session. What we have seen so far, demonstrated so far, how they corroborate for 5561 BCE are practically all the observations that you see on the screen, except the one at the top, the first one. So this one we have not described it, at least in this series. I have talked about this observation many times in different lectures, Mahabharata lectures, Mahabharata dating conferences, workshops, courses, and of course, lectures to various universities and colleges on Saptology, on various other forums. But in this Shraddha and Pradnya, I don't think I have discussed that particular observation yet. So we will do that. Now let's quickly look at the Mercury evidence. In this case, again, a lot of conjunction-like scenarios we have already looked at. Again, if that doesn't ring a bell to you, you have to go back and watch the previous episodes in this Shraddha and Pradnya series. I'm going to remove those observations from the screen. So now we are left with these three. The one at the top is already been discussed in the previous episode. So again, if that does not ring a bell, go and watch the previous episode in this series. And today, we are going to look at these two. Again, among these two, this observation here from Karna Parva is from the 17th day of the war after sunset. Now, sometimes people ask me, and again, I don't take this as a standalone question because it's not worth analyzing or entertaining like that. But, oh, how do you know this observation was after sunset? Many times, you have to read the Mahabharata text to know that the war has taken place, and there is a sunset, there is a darkness. Both parties, warriors from both sides, have returned to their camps and things like that. That's how tells us whether the observation is during the daytime or at nighttime. In other cases, like this is a good example, good observation, that the reference itself is telling you that this is after sunset. So I thought I'll just mention it. I don't have to do a separate episode on it. Just after the Karna was killed by Arjun, it's saying this, Hate Karne Sarito na prasanno. Okay, so the atmosphere is not very pleasant after this. Okay, After Karna was killed, after Karna fell down, Karna became dead, whichever way you want to interpret that. Karna was hurt, okay? Jagam chastam savita divakaraha. Okay. So Jagam cha asta, from the world meaning from Kurukshetra there. Cha astam savita divakara, sun. Okay. It went below the horizon. Asta. Okay. Sunset. And then Grahascha Tiryak Jwalanarka Varna Somasya Putro Abhidaya Tiryak. And then you could see the Somasya Putro, which is Mercury, rising up in the sky in a very abnormal, oblique, weird fashion, Tiryak and Tiryak. Now, we have discussed this evidence before, so I'm not going to spend much time on this today. In fact, I'm going to just fly through this particular evidence. But then there is second reference. This is very interesting. I'm going to use this as an illustration to explain many other aspects of how we make use of different manuscripts, how we make use of the critical edition, the importance of critical edition, importance of multiple manuscripts, but also address another issue that again, many researchers, but even ordinary folks thinks, but hold on, if there is a variation, if there are these all kinds of errors, translation error, translation error is a big deal that people make a big deal. It should not be a big deal. Guys, that's the beauty of a Sanskrit language. It's extremely sophisticated. It has a very low drift. And this is not limited to Mahabharata or Ramayana, even Rigveda. You get multiple meanings, multiple interpretations out of those shloka. Now, which of that particular interpretation is relevant? And this is not to suggest that only one interpretation is relevant. Look at Bhagavad Gita translations. Every Acharya has translated it in a slightly different fashion and at times opposite of each other. Okay, diametrically opposite of each other. In their context, they can take the meaning that is required for them. When I say they can take the meaning, I mean that is their adhikar. Okay, now you may or may not agree with it, and that's perfectly fine. That is the beauty of a Sanatan Dharma. Okay, so insistence on a work, insistence on non-laziness. Okay, so that is basically achara saishnuta, insistence on doing the work, doing it yourself. Every one of us is a seeker. Okay, we don't take just commandment from someone in a lazy fashion. We even question it, we analyze it. We may take it with a shraddha also, but even when you are taking with a shraddha or when you are analyzing it yourself, when you are drawing independent meaning, in all three cases, you are taking a certain risk, and that's acceptable. In fact, you are encouraged to take the risk. Okay, so that's achara saishnuta. Part of that encouragement to take the risk is what? Vichara swatantra. Because at the end of the day, we bring it down to pratyaksha. The proof is in the pudding, or proof is in the taste of pudding. Finally, how that reflects in your life, how that reflects if you're doing a research like this, how that reflects it into a objective testing, Indriya Pramanya, how you can show it, how that particular inference connects with rest of the puzzle that you're going to solve. Is there a consistency? Is there a scientific acumen that is exhibited through everything that you have done? Do you see a logical consistency? Okay, do you see an empirical consistency? Do you see a consistency with the theory, the statement of a theory? Do you have a statement of a theory? There are enough factors. Modern science gives us that. Nyaya Darshana gives many more. Okay, modern science is just a small portion of Nyaya Darshana. And you can use these criteria to basically decide, okay, the worth of a specific approach. So variations in translation is not an issue. You need to discuss it, but it's not an issue. Sometimes the person may know Sanskrit, but may be totally clueless about some of the background information one needs, whether it's from astronomy, whether it is from nature, different disciplines of science. And if that is lacking, then even a person who knows Sanskrit may not be able to translate it correctly. That is to be understood. But as long as we preserve the original Sanskrit words or the variations that we have encountered, the Patha-Bheda, it's all good. And sometime, if we, in spite of all of this, all our efforts, we cannot figure this out, so what? Just leave it aside. Just do not hide it. That's the most important point. So this one, this last verse here, I mean, on the page here, is a beautiful opportunity to illustrate all these points that I am stating. So let's get into it. First, we will begin with this Karna Parva observation, Karna Vada and Mercury evidence. What is the verse? Again, notice at the top is how it occurs in critical edition. And what I mean by how it occurs in critical edition, critical edition is created by looking at multiple manuscripts. And if somebody wants to understand, there are actually people who say, oh, not even a single letter of Mahabharata has changed since the time Bhagwan Vyasadeva composed it. That is simply not correct. On the other hand, on the other side, there are folks, I mean, I wouldn't say even others, these folks are on the other side. They will say the Mahabharata that we have, or the Ramayana that we have, Valmiki Ramayana or Mahabharata, it is written recently. It has changed significantly. Watch these people. Watch these people in academia, in the so-called Indic intellectuals, okay, whether they're pro or against, it doesn't matter. Notice what is driving that behavior. What is making them claim such nonsensical stuff? Why I call it nonsensical? Because based on my 30 years of study, I can assert that somebody saying that there are drastic modifications, significant modifications, and these are composed in a very recent time. And by recent time, last 100 years, 200, 300, 500,000, 2,000, 3,000 years is utter bullshit. Now, what is possible is that, remember, because these are written on the palm leaves in the past and different types of mediums, even with a paper, we have to do this. So yes, they were copied and recopied, and it did create many Patha-Bheda. Like what you're seeing on the right side is a good example of Patha-Bheda. Just for this one verse, one shlok, number 47, you see all the variations, and we'll quickly look at some of them. But based on that, or actually many people who claim this nonsense that these all written recently and it has nothing to do with the Mahabharata, I'll tell you the fraud that they create with this. They will say this. First, let's understand why they say it. Because they cannot take the evidence of the Mahabharata text and show that it matches with their claim for the year of Mahabharata war. Then they approach this dating of Mahabharata exactly the way a person with a tamasic buddhi would approach this. You know, adharmyam dharmyam itiya manyate tamasavruta sarvarthan viparitamsha buddhisa partha tamasi. If you want to know something about the Ramayana, where do you begin? All acharyas have accepted that it is Valmiki Ramayana. That's where it begins. Now, Valmiki Ramayana may have Patha-Bheda like this. You can look at the critical edition. Vyasa's, if you are looking at the Mahabharata, where do you look? You look at the Vyasa's Mahabharata, which has come to us already with the 4 recensions. Vyasa to Vaishampayan to Janmejaya during that time. So the Roma Harshana Sauti is listening to it. He goes to Naimisharanya. He tells the sages of Naimisharanya, and that also we have a partial documentation of that. Yeah. When did that happen? Within the 100 years of the Mahabharata war. And of course, then the Patha-Bheda. This is a good example of Patha-Bheda. Therefore, I said there are some people who said there is not even a change in one letter. They are wrong. This is the evidence of it. And then those people who say, oh, there are all kinds of changes that has occurred, and therefore we cannot use Valmiki Ramayana to determine the timing of Ramayana, or we cannot use the Vyasa Mahabharata to determining the timing of Mahabharata. How utterly nonsensical and foolish. I mean, you can always critique the evidence, but if you're not going to use Mahabharata as the main text, or if you're not going to use Valmiki Ramayana as the main text to determine the dating of Ramayana or Mahabharata, which school did you go to? Unfortunately, or interestingly, I would say, when people make such arguments, the audience is totally, audience. I mean, this is also the mahima of a Kali Yuga, but also that tamasi buddhi. And we'll talk about it. Jnaneshwara talks greatly about how this happens, in the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. But many others talk about it. Samartha Ramdas Swami refers to it. Is like the ordinary person. Okay, and so you decide whether you are ordinary or not. This is a good litmus test. Ordinary person, no matter who he or she listens to, if what they are listening to this one person, they think, oh yeah, this is all brilliant and totally makes sense. Then they go and listen to another individual, and that person could be saying stuff that is exactly opposite of what the speaker number one might have said. The same audience might listen to them and say, yeah, that totally makes sense. Which means what? This is a buddhi of a very tamasic kind that has no ability to discriminate. Now, this discrimination, not in the sense of we are talking racial discrimination or gender discrimination. This is the ability to analyze things, to separate the satya from asatya. Okay, satya-anruta, satya from anruta. This is what, when that is lacking, then we have got a problem in society. So sometimes you wonder, what is the cause of the current status of Indians, or about Indian civilization, or the narration of Indian civilization? These are the reasons. Because we decided we don't need to do anything. Somehow Ram and Krishna are going to take care of it. Well, Ram and Krishna want you. They are going to inspire you, but they want you to work. Remember, Vanaras were there to fight with Rama. And if you look at Mahabharata, actually Krishna was just guiding Arjuna and everyone else. Krishna wasn't fighting. So there is a message in both of these epics as to what is the role of each of us individual person. Okay, all right, back to this. We have, so what Bhandarkar has done is either they have taken one specific shlok from one specific manuscript, and based on their critical edition criteria, and you have to read Bhandarkar to figure out what that is. They decided, okay, this is how we decided to take this verse. But in their great wisdom, okay, in part of this critical edition, or the critical apparatus, they call it, like how it should be done, they note down all the variations, Patha-Bheda, let's say, from the manuscripts they have employed while writing critical edition. This is not to say this is not comprehensive. There could be additional manuscripts that they never found or never had access to, or could not use it in time, so there could be many more. The point is, with what we have, that is the beauty. And so that's like, I'm going to use it to basically falsify the utter nonsensical claims of the other extreme, which is to say this is all new recently and therefore it cannot be used. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so they think the Mahabharata cannot be used to date Mahabharata, Valmiki Ramayana cannot be used to date Ramayana. So what can be used? Somebody wrote something in a very recent time, in last 1,000 years, last 2,000 years. Some king created a plaque, like what you call tamrapat, or epigraph, or something engraved in the stone. All of this, at the end of the day, guys, is somebody's speculation. Just like right now in our times, in last 150 years, we have 100 plus different Mahabharata researchers with those many different dates. Suppose any one of these Mahabharata researcher in the court of some king, and the king wants to write something and want to include this in the context of Mahabharata or Ramayana dating, the king is going to ask that so-called expert, hey, when did the Mahabharata war happen? And that 1 year, he just takes it, asks the other person to write a plaque. That evidence is not any different than the Patha-Bheda and then the variations that we see here. But this point is lost on the audience, and obviously these fake researchers want the audience to be confused. Okay, all right, now sometime I'll talk about mincing the words or not mincing the words. When I talk so straight, occasionally, mostly people love it, but occasionally people will say, well, you are being very harsh on other researchers. I will quote from great sages how harsh or harsher they are on those people who create utpata of this kind. but that's for another time. So at the top is the shlok from critical edition. And what do we see there? Is that Hatesma Karne Sarito Nastravanti Jagam Chastu Kalusho Divakara. Basically, see, the words are different. Hate Karne Sarito No Prasanno versus Nastravanti. Okay, the rivers are not flowing. Okay. Then the next one, Jagam Chasta Savita Divakara. There, Jagam Chasta Kalusho Divakara. In spite of those variations, the bigger meaning has not changed. The sun has set. Okay, and the rivers are not, as if the rivers are not flowing after Karna has died, and so on. Grahascha tiryag jwalitar kavarno. Grahascha tiryag jwalanar kavarno. Jwalitar kavarno, jwalanar kavarno. Hasn't changed anything, guys. Yamasya putro abhidaya rajan is the critical edition. Somasya putro abhidaya tiryak is Gita Press. Now, Yamasya putro, we know this is an astronomy description here. Okay, so grahascha, there is a word grahascha tiryag jwalitarka varno. But if you look at Yamasya putro abhidaya rajan, you are not going to find Yamasya putra. Which planet is that? Which graha is that? We don't know. Now, when I say we don't know as a whole astronomy community. I don't know as an individual. If somebody says, oh yeah, Yamasya putra, here is the reference. That's what it means. And look, for my date, I show it after sunset on the 17th day of the war. I would say, be my guest. Okay, until the person does that, the person has to accept that that person's claim is not correct. Yamasya putra doesn't mean anything. Now, if that's all we had, we would have said, hey, I mean, yeah, graha is mentioned, but we don't know which graha. And then we could have possibly conjectured another planet. Every researcher might have conjectured something different. As long as they can prove the minimum criteria, that would have been acceptable, considered at least as a corroboration, not a decisive evidence to decide the year or anything. But fortunately, we have another variation or another Patha-Bheda where it says Somasya Putro, problem solved. That's Mercury. So we are going to see Mercury and show whether that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now what do you see? Grahascha Tiryak, Shveto Graha. Sometime, there it is called Shveto Graha. Okay. So Grahascha Tiryak and like a Shveto Graha. Well, white planet. Now, which one? We don't know. Then, if you look at again Shveto Graha Jolitarka Varno, Somasya and Yamasya, see the where it's coming from, that is what it's showing there. And then you also have Bhrata for Putro. So Yamasya Putro or Somasya Putro, that Putro, it is with a Bhrata. Now, I can take time, guys, and take you these different paths. Each one of this is individual word that I'm highlighting is actually a hyperlink, and we can talk about it. I'll just keep it short, and you guys let me know in the comments. Do you want me to go into this or just move fast and don't get into too much details? You will do it on your own. I'm very happy. I would prefer that, by the way. But no other Mahabharata researcher is going to do it. I mean, they don't want you guys to know any of these references because it tosses their dates out. Go and ask, hold them responsible. Why are they not discussing this evidence? And just make a note of all the excuses they come forward with describing why they did not consider this. You will have a blast. So Bhrata, very interesting. The person who might be writing and could not read the word properly, or the person who was copying that or writing didn't understand. Somasya putro. So instead of putro, it's a Bhrata. Who could be? And now, I can tell you, if I had a time, I mean, that will be just a whole 2 hours on this particular page. I could tell you where that Bhrata would have come. For example, look at the D7, and I can actually walk you through how that consistently matches. Okay, but I'll not go there. Because if Yamasya Putro is seen, then nobody knows any planet, any graha with that will be described as Yamasya Putro. So somebody would have thought, instead of Yama, what else it could be there? And so Somasya could be one of the original reading, or maybe somebody thought instead of Yamasya, it could be Somasya. Now, so that means when you are changing, and this is the principle given in Purva Mimamsa. Okay, in modern times, if you are into analysis, then you know what we call stepwise regression. Okay, which is to say you keep the putro constant and change yamasya with the somasya and see if you can make any sense out of it. Or what you might do, now keep the yamasya constant and change putra with a bhrata, like the way you see the variation. Now I want to show you some fun that happens with this. So if you keep, say, putro constant and yamasya, that doesn't make sense. Yamasya putro, we don't know what planet it is. If you turn that to somasya putro, immediately we know that's Mercury. Now let's try the other one. Okay, you hold yamasya constant and putro, instead of putro, yamasya putro, we don't know what it is, but now you change it to bhrata. Now, can you think of a yamasya bhrata as a putra? Sorry, as another planet? Absolutely yes. What is that planet? Please pay attention, because this is exactly what we are going to see into the next shlok. Okay, in some ways, how these things change. Just you're going to love it. Remember that somasya, yamasya. What is somasya, by the way? Moon. Soma is a moon and yama is a yama. Now, yamasya bhrata, who is that? That's when the background knowledge is important. Otherwise, the person will be bored to death. Like, what are you talking? Yamasya bhrata, putro, how the hell I care? If you go at the background and look at what is the relationship, how Indian sages describe, Indian astronomers describes this relationship, like boom, what is that? Bhrugu suno dhara putro shashi jena samanvito. If you don't have that background knowledge, you will look at this and you will not even realize that this is astronomy observation. Bhrugu suno dhara putro shashi jena samanvito. You just simply say, even if somebody knows only Sanskrit and no knowledge of astronomy, so person will say, okay, somebody's son and somebody's son and somebody's son. Okay, Dhara putro shashi jena samanvito charamam pandu putranam purastat sarva bhubujam. Okay, and they stood in front of Yudhishthir. Oh, so some war description. Nah, I mean, yes, it is a war description, but there is a connection made with the three planets standing in front of Yudhishthira. Bhrugu suno dhara putro shashi jena. Similarly, background knowledge you need require here is yamasya bhrata. Now, who is that? You need some background knowledge of astronomy. For example, how many of you know the mantra that is chanted for Saturn, Shani? Nilanjana samavasam ravi putram yamagrajam chaya martanda sambhutam tam namami shanishcharam. We are just chanting now. Of course, that's why the Shraddha begins. The Upasana begins with a simple chanting. Eventually, the meaning will come to you if your Upasana is strong. Okay. And if you have a good Guru. So what happens here? Nilanjana Samabhasam. I can skip that because it's not relevant right now for what I'm going to explain. Ravi Putram, son of Ravi. Yama Grajam. Okay. Like elder to Yama, which is what? The elder brother of Yama. And I don't know Sanskrit that well. Maybe Yama is the elder brother of this guy. Doesn't matter. But who is it referring to? We are referring to Saturn. So Yamasya Bhrata would mean Saturn. So that case, it will be taken as a Saturn. Okay. And if you take Somasya Putro, then it will be Mercury. Okay. Now, here again, hey, somebody wants to therefore like take this Yamasya Bhrata. Nobody has done it. No other Mahabharata researcher even talks about this reference, guys. Forget about they doing anything with it. And they don't want you to know it because that tosses their date instantaneously away multiple times. This is not the only verse. Right from Arundhati Vasishta to Bhishma Nirvana evidence to all the planetary description throws away any other claim other than 5561 BCE. That's how powerful, relevant, precise, accurate the evidence of Mahabharata text is. And we are only talking right now, only astronomy evidence. There is much more to come. Okay. So if one takes it as a Saturn, it is acceptable. I'm trying to tell you guys how different interpretations can be extracted and all fine. Vichar Swatantra. Okay. Try this out. Nobody wants to do it. I mean, people just don't understand what research means. People don't understand what tapasya is when you do research like this. Okay, so now what I'm going to show you, and you have seen this before, that I have taken the Somasya Putro Abhidaya Tiryak, this Mercury, Okay, the Tiryak rising, abnormal rising of a Mercury, okay, against the horizon. Usually what happens when something is rising, or something like a Suryodaya or Chandrodaya, Uday, right? They are coming from like this up. Here it is coming up, but it is coming up against the western horizon. Okay, so again, there is an element of poetry in this, but the Grahasya Tiryak Jolana Arka Varna, Somasya Putro, Abhyudaya Tiryak, Abhyudaya rising, okay, coming up in a very awkward fashion, because usually things are coming up from the eastern horizon. Here it is coming up from the western horizon. Okay, so again, look at this Yama Brata. Sorry, even I missed it myself just showing it to you. I underlined it. Is that Yama Brata? What I was just telling you guys, somebody therefore can take this as a Saturn if they choose to. Again, somebody says, well, Nilesh, you know what? You're taking it Mercury, but I have sufficient evidence in the critical edition to take this as a Saturn. And look, I'm going to show you how there is a Tiryak abnormal rising of Saturn after sunset, okay? On the 17th day of the war. I would say, be my guest. If you can show that, I will accept this as good as the corroboration that I am going to show you. Somasya putro abhidaya tiryak. That's why in Marathi, the statement goes, Shabdala arthacha bhar hot nahi. You have a word, okay? For example, English, I would say English date, okay? Date. Now, that's just the same spelling, but it has different meanings. Like, we call this what? Marathi, we call it khazur. I don't know Hindi, what you call, or what Hindi speaking people call, not you. Okay. And it also means the day, which date in the calendar. Exactly same spelling. Yeah. What is the right meaning is to be taken in the context. Okay. So anyways, somebody may take Saturn here, and if they can show, I would say, be my guest. But not even a single other Mahabharata researcher has even looked at this. They will give all kinds of excuses, guys. Okay. In fact, here, there is not even that other stupid excuse. They keep on bringing it up. And one day we will take a samachar of that stupid excuse as well. That, oh, these are analogies and all. Here, there is no analogy. Here, it's a simple description saying after Karna, was killed, sunset, and Somasya Putro Abhidaya Tiryak. Okay, so let's look at that Somasya Putro Abhidaya Tiryak. This is the scenario first day of the war. I just put sun just below the horizon to mimic that condition of Jagam Chastam Savita Divakara. Okay, now of course that's for the 17th day of the war, but I want to show you that consistent picture in order for you to understand, comprehend, appreciate what is that Tiryak rising, Abhyudaya Tiryak. Somasya Putro Abhyudaya Tiryak. Okay, what is that reverse rising of Mercury? Tiryak rising. That should be translated, I just said it, but that should be translated as reverse rising. Reverse rising of Mercury. Abhyudaya Tiryak. Okay, weird, abnormal, oblique. These are the different ways. Marathi we say tirsat manus, means awkward person, not the normal person in that sense. Okay, so sun has gone below the horizon. That's how I'm going to take a map for every day for the next 17 days of the war. Okay, so let's begin. Notice what's happening to relative position of Mercury with respect to the sun, and also with respect to Jupiter, and also with respect to the point of fall equinox. So you know where it is going. So this is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. What did you see, guys? Okay. So I always maintain the position of the sun just after sunset. And what do I see? Mercury is going eastward, sun is going eastward, Jupiter is also going eastward. That's all fine. But Jupiter is going faster. It's rising against the western horizon there. Okay. Through these 18 days, look, what did it do? It was the west of fall equinox. It crossed through that point through a significant travel, bypassed Jupiter and went up. This is that reverse rising, okay, of Mercury that is described on the 17th day of the war. Vyasa is observing it every day. So he's putting that in a context. Somasya Putro Abhidaya Tiryak. So that's done, okay. Now let's look at, this is on the 18th day of the war. It would have gone one day further, okay, but not required. Now the second reference we saw, Mercury and Saturn, or I'm going to say, is it Mercury and a moon? Now, if you look at the verse, what did you see? Rajan Buddha Shaneshcharo. So Buddha and Shaneshchara. So here it is very clear. This is from the critical edition. Okay. So Buddha and Shaneshchara. So Mercury and Saturn. If you want to look at the translation, the Hindi translation, उसने 3 बाणों से समरांगण में चित्रसेन को अत्यंत घायल कर दिया. उसने means किसने? Abhimanyu ne. Okay. Now, how do I know? Oh, well, read Mahabharata, guys. Okay. Read the translation, but don't trust the translation. Definitely go back to the original verse too. राजन, जैसे आकाश में 2 महाघोर ग्रह बुध और शनैश्चर सुशोभित होते हैं, उसी प्रकार 2 महान वीर चित्रसेन और अभिमन्यु रणभूमि में शोभा पा रहे थे. Okay, so let's underline the Buddha and Shaneshchara and Chitrasen and Abhimanyu. This is how the descriptions are coming to us. This is the beauty, this is the way the itihas is written for us. Right? What is that definition of itihas? Why it is written and so on, right? But basically the something that has happened, okay? So katha yuktam, but it is given in a form that is entertaining also. Therefore, these are all alankar and all that come. But in a beautiful way, they can create this as a puzzle. And this is not some speculation, guys. It is given in the Mahabharata text. Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutu Alat. It is a puzzle that we have to solve. Okay. Buddha Shani. Now, I'm giving you the scene. This is from the 9th day of the war when Chitrasen and Abhimanyu are fighting, and their fight is compared with Buddha and Shani. You know, so do Mahagor Graha se jaise Akash mein dikhte hai. Now, were they seen? The answer is no. Please pay attention, guys. Okay, so answer is no for 5561 BC. Okay, so sun's position is here. Mercury is to the east of the sun, and if you want to look at the Saturn, okay, that's near Chitra. Remember, Shveto Gras Tatha Chitra Samati Kramya Tishtati, or Bhagam Nakshatra Akramya Surya Putrena Pidate, or Samvatsara Sthainancho Graha Prajulito Bhav Vishakhayo Samipasto Bruhaspati, that's gone here, Shaneshcharo. Various references showing the position of Saturn between Chitra, Hasta, and Uttara Falguni. So it's here. Now, if sun is in between, unless there is an eclipse or so, you are not going to see these both together. So this description doesn't make sense. Now, watch very carefully, listen very carefully. Which description doesn't make sense? We have a descriptions in the Mahabharata text. So the onus is on a researcher to take the Mahabharata evidence and show that it matches for his or her specific date. What is my specific claimed year? 5561 BCE. So it is my duty to show that the Mahabharata description matches for my date. It's not like I look at the my date particular, look at this, and I say, you know what? That Mahabharata description is not correct because look, Saturn and Mercury cannot be seen together. Now, I hope you get the humor of it if I say that thing, and hopefully you laugh, but also become damn serious, because many Mahabharata researchers have claimed such kind of utter nonsense. When they look at their particular date and they look at a simulation or mathematical calculation, and when it doesn't match, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to quote their writing. This will take time, guys. Okay, maybe 2 years from now. I don't know when. I will quote their writing and show you when they look at something for their date and say, look, this is not how it matches with Mahabharata, so that's not correct. What the hell is not correct? Your date is not correct. Okay, that particular statement is given by Vyasadeva. What are you saying? But that's the kind of utter nonsense, unacceptable foolishness, okay, is been done. It's unscientific, illogical, is been done. Now, in all sincerity, what that person can do is saying, look, much of my other evidence matches, or these 3 pieces of evidence match, but these 100 do not match. Of course, that means the date cannot be correct. But at least, hey, I tried. This can be useful to the next researcher. So the next researcher won't spend time with your claim for too long if you're done honest man's work. So in this case, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is simple. And I need to spend some time on that too, because there are other group of idiots, okay? Though again, who lack logical reasoning skills, scientific acumen, they will do another foolish inference. I'll mention that. Okay, and when I'm telling you guys, it's again, I'm not talking about the Vyakti, therefore I'm not taking any names. I will take the names if required. I have no problem with that. But I'm emphasizing the vritti, and this is a tamasi vritti, this is idiotic vritti of a very low kind, vritti, a kanishta person, a kanishta adhikari, that person's knowledge is extremely kanishta, of a very low quality. That's why this kind of stupidity is made. In this case, what I must do as a sincere researcher is say this particular observation from the Mahabharata does not match with my date. So I should score myself -1 at a minimum. So I just say, okay, -1. My score is -1. It doesn't match. Now, the other foolishness that people have created, I have documented evidence of that. People writing to me and, I get tired because the number of fools is many. Okay. Then somebody, suppose I show like this, it says, okay, Nilesh, so look, there is a description of Mahabharata and it does not match for 5561 BC. Therefore, your date is wrong. Now, what is it that you don't understand? That's another high level of stupidity. There are crucial experiments, there is a crucial evidence, and some evidence that you use to arrive at the conclusion, arrive at the date, and other evidence is a corroborative evidence. If I can even show Buddha and Shani together, that by itself doesn't prove a date, or it does not allow me to arrive at a date, because Mercury and Saturn can be shown together many, many times. In fact, you can show at least once every year, because Mercury is going to make a complete round. So one observation does not match, and therefore many people will say, therefore your dating is wrong, are those folks who have no clue whatsoever of what Vijnana Buddhi is, no clue whatsoever what logical reasoning skills are. This is called corroboration, guys. Okay, it's like a tennis match. So for example, it's like saying, okay, so hey, this particular one team, cricket team, let's say, oh, they made 2 centuries, and how come they lost again? It is as stupid as saying on the other side, oh, they basically got all the 10 wickets of the other side. How come they did not win? Well, there are some additional rules to that. Tennis. Okay, suppose player A beats player B in best of 5 as 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. Even in a match like that, the player B might have scored some points against A. We still declare A as the winner. And then people will say, but come on, that's a sports. Well, that's not science. Well, what the hell you know about science? The problem is you don't know anything about science. You don't know anything about Nyaya Darshana. That's why you make such stupid statements. There is a well-known principle of verisimilitude score, well-known principle of truth-likeness score. That's how all the science is done. Right from Copernicus to Newton to Kepler to, just take all the names, Einstein, okay, Fresnel, Maxwell, Faraday, Lavoisier, whoever, doesn't matter which field. That's how the science is done, because science is about more likely versus less likely, just like a tennis. This person within the set rules of the game scored many points in comparison to this guy. This guy is a winner. Now, how spectacular the win was, that can be determined by the absolute score. But just because the one person got another point or the winner made one mistake, therefore, oh yeah, come on, you lose, you made one mistake. That's stupidity. In sports, we understand that. In science, many people don't understand because they don't have a scientific background. Again, that is our problem. Okay, if you think why our civilizational narrative is where it is, some of these problems are part of it. So what is a quick conclusion? That as is, taken this verse as is, the way it appears in critical edition or the way they selected in critical edition, we cannot take that as a final verdict. Actually, it goes against my particular claim. I cannot say that it corroborates my claim or corroborates my year. Therefore, I should assign myself a score of -1 if I just stick to that. Now, I want to quickly show you the beauty of the Patha-Bheda. Now, if for that particular verse, what are some of the variation? Just like we looked at Yamasya Putro, Yamasya Bhrata, Somasya Putro, Somasya Bhrata, we can try this combination. When I say we can try this combination, we don't create additional Patha-Bheda. That will be another stupidity. I'm talking about the Patha-Bhed come to us, in a very dharmic tradition, very, I call them preserver of tradition. Okay, preservation of knowledge. So they have preserved it for us. They may not have understood astronomy. They may not know the detailed knowledge. They preserved it for us. Therefore, we can do all this wonderful analysis with it. So Buddha Shaneshwara, quickly, I want to show this, is what are some of the variations? Patha-Bheda, Raja, Rajan, Baddha. Now, I don't know, Baddha doesn't mean anything. Somebody may say, could this be Buddha? Yeah, that's a different story. But Rajan Baddha doesn't tell me what to make of this verse otherwise. Okay, two people were fighting in Rajan Baddha Shaneshcharo. So like, they held Saturn together, whatever that translation is. Then the alternate you see for Rajan Buddha. The Rajan Buddha is how it is there in the critical edition, as they consider the keywords. But let's look at something else. There is another variation, Baddha Nishakara. So now Shaneshchara is changed with a Nishakara, but Buddha is also changed with a Baddha Nishakara. Again, we can say like Nishakara, which is moon, is like held in one place, or Baddha Shaneshchara will be Saturn held in one place, something like that. Okay, that would be, and if somebody wants to take that, hey, be my guest, show me that's the case and that matches. But remember, there are two people fighting there and they are compared. So actually, you can therefore remove Baddha Shaneshchara or Baddha Nishakara, because a comparison, Samagato Totu Rane Mahamatra Virochatam Yatha Divi Mahagoro Rajan Buddha Shaneshchara makes more sense, not the Baddha. Not the Baddha Shaneshchara, Baddha Nishakara, because then only one person is compared, whereas we have two people fighting. So what are we left with? Buddha Rajan Buddha Shaneshchara, which I said it does not match for 5561 BC. And I look forward to some other Mahabharata researcher taking this and saying, look, Nilesh, it matches for my date. And you as an audience should be watching this too. I can tell you right now, not even a single other Mahabharata researcher dare show this Buddha Shaneshchara. And under that thing, there's a lot more in the background, okay, that these people want to fool you from. It's my open challenge for anyone to come and show Buddha Shaneshchara as matching for their date. And we will have a very interesting discussion. I look forward to that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you other additional alternate readings. Shaneshchara, you see how much some variation happens plus minus. So we should be willing to try. Okay, if I change the word little bit, does it make more sense? It's acceptable. And I'll talk about that some other time. We do this all the time, I mean, somewhere some person has missed a number, like, in phone number, like instead of like a 10 digit, the number is like 9 digit. We immediately know the person must have missed a number. It's like that. We say, hey, hold on, can you tell me what's the additional number? Or if we know particular area and the first number is missing and rest of the number makes sense, we know the area code for the first number. We say, okay, it ought to be 4 or whatever that number is. You can make that correction. Anyways, and you can note it down. Hey, I made a correction. And that's how very honest our manuscriptology tradition is. The critical edition is a very good example of that. Okay. Now, what else? There is a variation. There is also a variation, Kale Buddha Nishakaro. And I'm going to show you, if you take that variation, I have taken that variation. By the way, this verse I found very recently. It is not there in my books. Okay. Both books possibly it's not there. Buddha Nishakaro. So Mercury and Moon. Now, in the vicinity, as if they're fighting together. Now, if you take that, this is again the 9th day of the war, when the description occurs. Just after sunset, you have a Mercury here, okay, at the one extreme. And I mean, you can calculate the degrees, doesn't matter. And then you have a moon. This is like 9th day. So moon of Ashtami, you can say, okay. Those moon, and they are compared, like two fighting, in the sky. As a comparison, Upaman with Chitrasen and Abhimanyu fighting on the ground. Celestial is equal to terrestrial. So if I take that alternate reading from the critical edition, the other Patha-Bhed, then there is a beautiful corroboration. So if I have to give this corroboration, how would I do it? Would I just not mention Buddha Shanashcharo and just go and just do it? Well, if I do that, that's perfectly fine because it's already there here. But a fair thing to do, a truthful thing to do is, I would say critical edition reading is like this, Gita press reading is like this, as is Buddha Shanashcharo, it does not match for 5561 BC, the ninth day of the war. However, I looked at the critical edition, looked at the Patha-Bheda, and there is one reading which says Buddha Nishakaro. If I take that, I can beautifully show the corroboration of these two in the same part of the sky on the ninth day of the war, after sunset, both visible, bingo. It's a good corroboration. So in this case, I can do +1. All of you guys, I would ask you to, those of you already have it, great. If you don't, take all 3 books of mine, Amazon or Subbu publications, depending on where you are, okay? Each book has a chapter conflicting observation. Now, because I did not I had not found this observation 10 years ago or 6 years ago, whenever that I wrote second book 4 years ago, it's not there. But if I would have found it, this would have gone possibly into that conflicting observation chart. And not only I would have just said Buddha Shanashcharo and it doesn't match, I would have said it doesn't match as is, but if you take alternate reading, actually it does match. And I would have left it there for people to understand. Tell me any other researcher who has written a chapter similar to conflicting observation. It doesn't have to be a chapter where it says, hey, out of these 300, these 270 observations do not match for my date. Who is saying such a thing? Because that's the reality. Why 270? They are forced to say out of these 300 plus, 300 observations do not match for my date. That is what they have to write. Okay, they dare not write such a chapter. Anyways, I'm done as far as these particular 2 observations are done. Quick summary. Mahabharata descriptions from the ninth day of the war describes Mercury and Saturn near each other. In different scenarios, we have looked at conjunction in the vicinity, seen together, seen at the same time, same part of the sky, and so on. Okay. The description cannot be, this particular description, Buddha Raja Shanashcharo, cannot be corroborated for 5561 BCE. However, when looked at the Patha-Bheda, the alternate readings of Mercury and the moon, which is what? Buddha Nishakara, indeed can be corroborated for the ninth day of the Mahabharata war, and that is in 5561 BCE. It is my open challenge to all other Mahabharata researchers. If they have guts, they let them come forward and show Buddha Shanashcharo or Buddha Nishakara for the ninth day of the war in their whatever the year they are claiming. And that won't be the end of it. If they can claim, that will be a lot of fun. It begins a very interesting discussion. Okay, I look forward to that. This is a good illustration of how Patha-Bheda is useful in solving this jigsaw puzzle rather than a problem or a hurdle. It's not a problem. It's not a hurdle. And as we go through this Ramayana or this Mahabharata, but then Ramayana evidence, I'll show you how Patha-Bheda beautifully comes to our help, okay, and gives us a richer understanding, gives us additional insights. Even possibly it tells us why the mistake might have happened. Just like I showed you, Yamasya Putro, Yamasya Bhrata, Somasya Putro, Somasya Bhrata. So why somebody instead of Putro might have thought even Bhrata? That person would have seen Yamasya and he said, Yamasya Putro doesn't make sense, but Yamasya Bhrata makes sense. So person who is simply copying the text and the text is not clear or something happened there, that's when because Somasya became Yamasya, but now Yamasya Putro doesn't make sense. So someone else decided to change even Putro with a Bhrata because now that makes sense. Remember, this entire exercise that even what we are doing now and the way people were doing through their Shraddha is what? To make sense of the world around us. And that's when Itihasa helps us. And to make sense of the Itihasa, we have to do that so that we can make sense of the world. Okay, all right. Let's stop with this. And I did the summary. So I'll see you shortly in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Keep watching, keep subscribing, keep sharing, keep discussing. Namaskar.